Hello everybody, and welcome back to Game Critiques. E3 finally concluded, so today I'm back to critique each and every show. I'll be taking a look at what I predicted, taking a look at what actually happened, comparing the two, and giving each show an overall rating. E3 wasn't particularly great this year, and that's understandable given the current circumstances. However, said circumstances will not be affecting how I rate these conferences. My ratings may come across as pretty harsh as a result, but please understand that I'm not genuinely upset at anyone involved in most of these shows, except for mythical games. Let's get started by taking a look at Ubisoft's conference. My predictions for Ubisoft's conference were shockingly spot on. I said they'd show Far Cry 6, Riders Republic, and the new Rainbow Six game, and those were the three main headlines. I said they'd reveal a new Just Dance and a new Mario plus Rabbids, and both of those happened as well. We didn't get a Trials game, which I said might show up, but we did get one more reveal with Rocksmith Plus. And all the games I predicted wouldn't be there, Beyond Good and Evil 2, Rayman, and Skull and Bones, weren't. This show was still a little worse than I expected, though. The big reveal of the Avatar game at the end didn't quite land, as we already knew the game existed, and it was a CG trailer. There was some terrible pacing overall. 15 minutes in, they had only shown Rainbow Six, which looks decent, but not particularly great, and later on they spent time on stuff like trailers for TV shows that are already out. I was pretty excited to see the new Mario plus Rabbids, and they focused on what I thought they would, but I still left feeling like they wasted a decent chunk of my time. I give this conference a C-. Now on to Gearbox's conference. Gearbox's show is by far the worst E3 presentation I've ever seen from a major developer. I do not know why this show existed. There were two big reveals. Homeworld 3 revealed with only a logo that they showed 3 separate times for no reason, and Godfall on PS4, a downgrade of a bad PS5 game. They also replayed multiple trailers from the Summer Games Fest show and wasted 15 to 20 minutes on Randy Pitchford wandering around the set of the movie, not even showing off any costumes or anything. They also tried to insert skits that may actually have had worse writing than any of the Borderlands games, which I did not think was possible. I predicted they'd show basically nothing, and I was somehow still shocked by how bad this was. This show gets an F-. Now, onto the Xbox show. The general consensus seems to be that the Xbox show was the best of the bunch, though I'm gonna have to disagree. All the first-party games that I predicted wouldn't be there, half of which were announced multiple years ago, weren't. Instead, we got more CG teasers for games like Contraband and The Outer Worlds 2 that we probably won't see for many years. Even the big final announcement was a CG teaser for a new IP that's probably more than a year away. They did finally show something of Starfield, but that too was only a CG teaser that ultimately revealed nothing but a release date that is, you guessed it, more than a year away. They didn't even show gameplay for the campaign of Halo Infinite, which was supposed to come out months ago. They didn't even mention the Cuphead DLC, which was supposed to come out years ago. Psychonauts 2 looks promising and comes out pretty soon, and Forza looks very impressive and is at least out this year, but I was underwhelmed by the first party content here. There were more reveals than I expected, but I don't think that's a good thing when they were pretty much all CG trailers for games that are years off, games that might not even come out like Scalebound. Especially when we've already spent months or years waiting to see any gameplay for the tons of other games they've announced just CG trailers. The third party content was really underwhelming here as well. There were some promising looking indie titles, but we didn't even see more of the gunk, the one that I predicted, which is apparently still supposed to come out this year. The only Japanese game we saw was Ayuden Chronicles, a game that was kickstarted less than a year ago and given a 2023 date. They also didn't show the next Call of Duty, but they sure did show lots of military shooters. I'm struggling to remember a single game I'm interested in from this conference. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 had a good trailer, but it's not my cup of tea, and pretty much everything else was just CG for stuff that is years off, or indies that I have my doubts will even ever materialize after seeing what has happened to so many other indies in past Xbox shows. Remember the last night from E3 2017? Yeah, I didn't think so. The pacing of the conference was solid, they didn't waste a lot of time, and they did have the biggest reveals from the show in a sense, but ultimately I struggled to get excited for any of them or even believe most of them will ever release. This show gets a C+ from me. Now onto the iconic Square Enix presentation. Square had one of the most baffling presentations I've ever seen. The first half of their show was focused solely on Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this game looks surprisingly decent, but they really didn't have to show so much. The reveal trailer and the couple minutes of talking afterwards was more than enough, but then they transitioned into a 15+ minute gameplay demonstration that mostly showed stuff already shown in the trailer. Then they revealed pixel remasters of Final Fantasy 1 through 6, with no date, no footage, and no release on consoles. They re-revealed Babylon's Fall to be an ugly multiplayer live service game with no date. They spent 5 more minutes on Avengers DLC, and they spent 5 more minutes on more mobile games. They showed a Life is Strange trailer which all of my friends who like the series said underwhelmed them. And then they finally revealed Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, to be what looks like a PS3 game with performance problems and a total of 3 colors used in its environment design. They released a time-limited demo that didn't work for multiple days for this as well. But when I finally got to play it, I found that the trailer exclusively showed demo content for no reason. The combat was fun, and I have to imagine there's more environmental variety out there. But I'm still pretty underwhelmed, and it was by far the best thing there. Kingdom Hearts and Neo were unsurprisingly no-shows, aside from mobile game stuff, but Neo The World Ends With You and Final Fantasy 16 were also no-shows, which was very disappointing. Ultimately, this show was poorly paced, it didn't have the content to justify its length or arguably its existence, and even the little that was there was disappointing. This show gets an F+. Now I'm going to speed through some of the smaller showcases, rating each one. The PC gaming show was predictably a waste of time and it had no memorable announcements. F. The Future Games show is in a similar spot, it's also an F. I'm not a huge fan of limited run games. Making their physical prints limited run kind of goes against the whole preservation goal, but the stuff they revealed was decent. The show wasn't too long, and it wasn't hard to watch. Sadly there was no Y2K, but it's still a B-. Devolver was hit or miss. Not every joke landed, but it wasn't too long and it had some neat announcements. Also a B-. Verizon had a show that was pretty much pointless. It's another F. Intellivision showed off a $250 scam console with Asteroids as its biggest game, but it was still better than Gearbox. This one gets an F half minus, I guess. I expected very little from Capcom, but they showed pretty much nothing. One line of text confirming Resident Evil 8 DLC was starting development was the only new announcement. However, their trailers were decent and it was short. D+. Bandai Namco showed one game, and it wasn't Elden Ring or Tales of Arise, it was House of Ashes. It was long too. It gets an F. Lastly, I want to mention Mythical Games here. I didn't predict anything for their show. It wasn't really on my radar. But when I tuned in to see Blanco's Block Party, a Roblox ripoff built around NFTs, and I heard the quote, "We're putting the fun in non-fungible tokens," I realized that maybe E3 was better off dead. This show gets an F double minus. Finally, let's talk about Nintendo's Direct, the only major show that didn't massively disappoint. Nintendo had one of the shorter conferences in this E3, but one of the higher numbers of actual reveals with gameplay and games coming out this year. I predicted they'd announce 5 first-party games for this year, and they ended up announcing 4. I was right about 2D Metroid, and that was by far the best reveal this E3. Not only was it a new 2D Metroid, not only was it Metroid 5, it was Metroid Dread. You can't get a reveal much more exciting than that. They also announced WarioWare Get It Together, Mario Party Superstars, and Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. I was sad to be wrong about Donkey Kong being there, I love the series, but the stuff that got announced was really solid. I love WarioWare, and I was starting to think that it had never come back in a normal way. I'm very happy to be proven wrong here. I predicted Super Mario Party 2, but we got a different Mario Party game that will probably be the best one in years, as it looks great visually, and it's built on a foundation of old content that we already know is good. This is much better than what I imagined Super Mario Party 2 would have been. I predicted a Fire Emblem remake, but we got an Advance Wars remake instead. Now, I don't love the new style, but I'm just happy to see the series back in any way at all. The Smash character was a little disappointing to me personally, but I still think it's a better pick than Pyra and Mythra. I'm just sad to see Lloyd Irving basically deconfirmed. Tekken absolutely deserves Smash representation though. They showed more Shin Megami Tensei 5, which looks excellent, and they showed more No More Heroes 3 in the Treehouse, which also looks pretty good. But they did not show Bayonetta 3. Though honestly, after seeing Babylon's Fall, I think it might be time for me to just lose hope for that game. The last first party thing they showed was a teaser for Breath of the Wild 2, which looks incredible. I love what they showed and what they seem to be going for. However, I wish they showed a little bit more. At least a title would have been nice, and I was a little sad to hear it seems like it's probably more than a year away. The third party reveals didn't bring as many new Switch focused titles as I would have liked, though they had some great stuff like the Monkey Ball remasters and some awesome re-releases like the Danganronpa collection and Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater. Ultimately, I wish this Direct had just one more new single player focused game for this year. We haven't gotten many recently, and while the stuff we're getting this year looks neat, a lot of it is remastered content and a lot of it is multiplayer focused. If they threw in a Donkey Kong or a Xenoblade for this year, that would have been one of the best Directs we've ever gotten. I also wish we got to see more already announced games like Splatoon 3, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and the aforementioned Bayonetta 3, but as it stands, it is still a great Direct that shows the most promising lineup of games Nintendo has had in at least a year for the near future. This show gets a B+. Alright, that's every E3 conference ranked. It was a little rough this year, but even still it had some great reveals and it was much better than the month spent announcing stuff last year. I still can't get over Metroid Dread. If you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, commented, and subscribed. I'd also recommend you check out some of my other content like my review of Miitopia. Thank you all for watching, have a great rest of your day.